The fluorescent lights of the university library buzzed overhead as Maya Chen stared at the eviction notice in her trembling hands. 22 years old, brilliant beyond her years, yet drowning in debt that seemed to multiply faster than her academic achievements. Her scholarship covered tuition, but rent, food, and basic necessities remained an impossible mountain to climb. "Excuse me, dear." The voice was refined, carrying decades of authority and grace. Maya looked up to see an elegant woman approaching her table. Despite being in her 70s, Eleanor Whitman moved with the poise of someone who had commanded boardrooms and charity galas for half a century. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, her clothes spoke of quiet wealth, and her eyes held an intelligence that seemed to see right through Maya's carefully constructed facade. "I couldn't help but notice your distress," Eleanor said, settling into the chair across from Maya with practiced ease. "Financial troubles?" Maya's instinct was to deny it, to maintain the pride that had carried her this far. But something in Eleanor's gentle expression broke down her defenses. "I'm about to lose my apartment," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I work 2 jobs, maintain a 4.0 GPA, but it's still not enough." Eleanor studied her for a long moment, and Maya felt as if she were being evaluated. Not judged, but carefully assessed. "What's your major?" "Environmental engineering. I want to develop sustainable water systems for underserved communities." Maya's voice gained strength as she spoke about her passion. "Noble goal." "Expensive education." Eleanor's fingers drummed thoughtfully against the table. "Tell me, Maya." "Yes, I asked around. I know your name. How far would you go to secure your future?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Maya felt her heart rate quicken. "What do you mean?" Eleanor leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I'm going to make you an offer that will sound absolutely insane. But before you dismiss it, consider this. I'm 71 years old, worth approximately $57 million, and I'm dying." Maya's eyes widened, but Eleanor continued without pause. "Pancreatic cancer. 6 months, maybe less. I have no children, no close family, and a board of trustees circling like vultures waiting to tear apart everything I've built." Eleanor's voice remained steady, matter of fact. "I've watched you for weeks, Maya. Your dedication, your character, your dreams that extend beyond yourself. So here's my proposition. Marry me." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. "I'm sorry, what?" "A legal marriage. You'll inherit my estate, my foundation, my life's work. You'll have the resources to not only complete your education, but to change the world in ways I never could." Eleanor's eyes never wavered from Maya's face. "In return, you'll spend my remaining months as my companion. No romantic expectations, no physical demands, simply, be there." Maya's mind reeled. "This is crazy. You don't even know me. I know enough. I know you turned down a high-paying internship because it conflicted with your volunteer work at the homeless shelter. I know you share your lunch with that elderly janitor who can't afford proper meals. I know you called your mother last night to lie about how well you're doing because you don't want her to worry." Eleanor's smile was sad, but warm. "I've done my research, dear. You're exactly the kind of person who deserves a chance to make their mark on this world." Maya stared at this woman who seemed to know her better than she knew herself. "Why me? Why not donate to charity?" "Because charities become institutions, bound by bureaucracy and politics. But you're still young enough to dream, experienced enough to understand struggle, and principled enough to use power responsibly." Eleanor reached across the table, her aged hand covering Maya's young one. "I'm not asking you to love me, Maya. I'm asking you to let me invest in your future, and through you, in the future of everyone you'll help." The library around them seemed to fade away. Maya thought of her mother working 3 jobs back in California, of her little brother who looked up to her, of all the communities still without clean water, while she sat here drowning in debt. When would this happen? Maya heard herself ask. "Tomorrow. I have a judge who's an old friend. We'll sign a prenup that protects us both. You get the inheritance regardless of how long the marriage lasts, and my assets are protected from any claims by distant relatives." Eleanor's tone was businesslike now. "Think of it as the world's most unusual scholarship program." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. 7 years of struggling, of choosing between textbooks and meals, of watching her dreams slip further away with each passing semester. And now this stranger was offering her a lifetime of possibilities. "This is completely insane," Maya whispered. Eleanor smiled, and for the first time, Maya saw not the powerful millionaire or the dying woman, but simply someone who understood what it meant to fight for your dreams. Sometimes, dear girl, insane is exactly what the world needs. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Eleanor's penthouse apartment as Maya stood before the full-length mirror, adjusting the simple white dress Eleanor had provided. Her hands shook as she tried to fasten the delicate pearl necklace, a family heirloom, Eleanor had mentioned casually, as if lending precious jewelry to virtual strangers was perfectly normal. Having second thoughts, Eleanor's reflection appeared behind Maya's in the mirror. She wore an elegant navy suit that probably cost more than Maya's entire wardrobe, yet her expression held none of the superiority Maya had expected from someone of her wealth. Third and fourth thoughts, Maya admitted, turning to face her soon-to-be wife. The word felt foreign, almost surreal. "Eleanor, are you absolutely sure about this? We barely know each other." Eleanor moved to the window, gazing out at the city skyline she'd called home for 4 decades. "Do you know what I regret most about my life, Maya?" Maya shook her head, drawn closer by the vulnerability in Eleanor's voice. "I spent 60 years building an empire, accumulating wealth, gaining respect and influence, but I forgot to build connections that mattered. My parents died disappointed that I never gave them grandchildren. I buried myself in work after my fiancé died in Vietnam, convinced that success could fill the void." Eleanor's fingers traced patterns on the glass. "Now I'm dying alone in a penthouse that feels more like a mausoleum than a home." "You're not alone now," Maya said softly, surprising herself with the sincerity in her voice. Eleanor turned, and Maya saw tears glistening in the older woman's eyes. "That's exactly why I know this is right. In 2 conversations, you've shown me more genuine compassion than most people have in years." The ride to the courthouse was quiet, both women lost in their thoughts. Eleanor's driver, James, had been with her for 15 years and seemed unsurprised by the morning's unusual destination. Maya wondered what other unconventional decisions he'd witnessed during his employment. Judge Margaret Harrison was Eleanor's contemporary, a sharp-eyed woman who'd clearly known Eleanor for decades. Her chambers felt more like a library than a government office, lined with leather-bound law books and family photographs. "Eleanor Whitman," Judge Harrison said with a mixture of affection and exasperation, "in 40 years of friendship, you've never ceased to amaze me. But this takes the cake. Maggie, meet Maya Chen. Maya, this is Margaret, who's been keeping me out of legal trouble since law school." Maya extended her hand nervously. "Nice to meet you, Your Honor. Just Margaret is fine, dear. Though I have to ask, and I mean no disrespect, but are you absolutely certain about this arrangement?" Margaret's concern was genuine. "I've known Eleanor long enough to trust her judgment, but marriage is a serious legal commitment, even under these circumstances." "I understand the gravity of it," Maya replied, her voice gaining strength. "Eleanor has offered me an opportunity to change my life and hopefully make a difference in the world. I don't take that lightly." Margaret studied them both carefully. "Very well. Shall we proceed?" The ceremony was brief and businesslike, yet somehow it carried more weight than Maya had anticipated. When Eleanor slipped the simple gold band onto Maya's finger, her touch was gentle, almost reverent. "By the power vested in me by the state of New York, I now pronounce you married," Margaret declared. I suppose you may shake hands." Eleanor smiled and extended her hand formally, but Maya surprised them both by stepping forward and embracing her new wife gently. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in me." Eleanor's arms came up slowly to return the embrace. "Thank you for giving an old woman purpose in her final months." Back at the penthouse, Maya's new home, she realized with a start. Eleanor showed her to a beautifully appointed guest room. "This is yours for as long as you need it. I've taken the liberty of having some clothes delivered. I hope you don't mind, but I noticed you've been wearing the same 3 outfits in rotation." Eleanor's tone was matter-of-fact, not pitying. There's also a laptop, study materials, anything you might need for your classes. Maya's eyes widened as she took in the room. The bed was larger than her entire previous apartment's living area, and the view of Central Park took her breath away. Eleanor, this is too much. Nonsense. You're family now. Family takes care of family. Eleanor paused at the doorway. I know this is overwhelming, Maya. Take your time adjusting. We'll figure out the rest as we go. That evening, they shared their first dinner together at Eleanor's dining room table. A massive mahogany piece that could have seated 12, but felt intimate with just the two of them at one end. Eleanor had dismissed her housekeeper for the evening and cooked herself. A simple pasta dish that spoke of comfort rather than sophistication. You cook? Maya asked, surprised. I lived alone for 40 years, dear. I had to learn sometime. Eleanor smiled over her wine glass. Besides, I find it relaxing. Therapeutic, even. They ate in comfortable silence for a while before Eleanor spoke again. Tell me about your family. Maya's face lit up. My mom's a nurse in Sacramento. She immigrated from Taiwan when I was 5, worked 3 jobs to put me through school. My little brother Danny is 17, wants to be a doctor. Her expression grew thoughtful. They don't know about this. I wasn't sure how to explain it. What will you tell them? The truth eventually. That I married someone who believed in my dreams enough to invest in them. Maya met Eleanor's eyes. It's not the whole truth, but it's not a lie either. Eleanor nodded approvingly. Family should never be burdened with more than they can handle. Your love for them is evident, Maya. They raised someone special. As the days passed, they fell into an unexpected rhythm. Maya would attend classes in the morning while Eleanor handled business calls and medical appointments. In the afternoons, they'd sit in Eleanor's study. Maya working on assignments while Eleanor read or managed her foundation's affairs. It was on the 3rd day that Eleanor collapsed. Maya heard the crash from the kitchen and ran to find Eleanor on the study floor, papers scattered around her, her face pale and drawn with pain. Don't call 911. Eleanor gasped as Maya reached for her phone. Just help me to the couch. Maya carefully supported Eleanor's weight, shocked at how fragile she felt. Eleanor, you need medical attention. I need dignity, Eleanor replied firmly. This is what the next few months will look like, Maya. Are you prepared for that? Looking down at this proud, brilliant woman who was fighting to maintain her composure even in pain, Maya felt something shift inside her chest. This wasn't just about money or opportunity anymore. We're in this together, Maya said and meant it completely. Eleanor squeezed her hand, and for the first time since they'd met, Maya saw her truly smile. The 4th morning of their marriage brought autumn's first real chill to Manhattan. Maya had taken to waking early, preparing breakfast, and leaving it on a tray outside Eleanor's bedroom door. A quiet ritual that allowed both women to maintain their privacy, while acknowledging their new interdependence. But this morning, Eleanor's door was already open. Maya found her new wife sitting in the sunroom, wrapped in a cashmere throw, watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of gold and amber. Her silver hair caught the light, and despite the obvious pain etched in the lines around her eyes, she looked almost ethereal. Couldn't sleep? Maya asked gently, settling into the chair beside her. Pain keeps irregular hours, Eleanor replied with characteristic directness. But I've always loved this time of day. The world feels full of possibilities before reality sets in. Maya studied Eleanor's profile, noting the way she held herself even in discomfort. Back straight, chin up, maintaining the dignity that seemed as natural to her as breathing. Tell me about your fiancé, the one who died in Vietnam. Eleanor's hands stilled on her coffee cup. For a moment, Maya thought she'd overstepped. But then Eleanor began to speak. Thomas Mitchell, Tommy. We met at Columbia. He was studying journalism, determined to change the world one story at a time. Eleanor's voice grew soft with memory. He was brilliant, passionate, absolutely fearless. Everything I thought I wanted to be. What happened? He volunteered to go to Vietnam as a war correspondent. Said history was being written and he needed to be there to write it truthfully. Eleanor's smile was bittersweet. I begged him not to go. We fought about it terribly. The last thing I said to him was that if he cared more about his career than our future, maybe we weren't meant to be together. Maya felt her heart clench. Eleanor. He died 3 weeks later when his convoy hit a landmine. 24 years old. Eleanor's voice remained steady, but Maya saw her hands tremble slightly. I threw myself into building my business empire. Told myself I was honoring his memory by being fearless in my own way. But really, I was just afraid of ever being that vulnerable again. They sat in silence as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Maya found herself thinking about her own fears, of failure, of not being worthy of the opportunities Eleanor was giving her, of somehow disappointing this remarkable woman. Is that why you chose me? Maya asked finally. Because I remind you of him somehow? Eleanor turned to look at her directly, and Maya was struck by the intensity in her pale blue eyes. No, dear girl. I chose you because you remind me of who I could have been, if I'd been braver. That afternoon, Eleanor had a doctor's appointment, and Maya insisted on accompanying her. Dr. Patricia Reeves was a no-nonsense oncologist who'd clearly been treating Eleanor for some time. Mrs. Whitman, Dr. Reeves said after examining Eleanor, your pain levels seem to be increasing ahead of our projections. How are you managing? I'm fine, Eleanor replied curtly. Maya recognized the tone, the same one Eleanor used with business associates when she wanted to end a conversation. But Dr. Reeves wasn't deterred. With respect, that's not what I asked. Your labs show significant changes since last week. We need to discuss adjusting your pain management protocol. What does that mean? Maya interjected, earning a sharp look from Eleanor. Dr. Reeves glanced between them, clearly trying to navigate the unusual dynamic. It means we need to be more aggressive with medication, which may affect Eleanor's alertness and cognitive function. It's a trade-off between pain management and quality of life. Eleanor's jaw tightened. I won't spend my remaining time in a drug-induced haze. Eleanor, Maya said gently, reaching for her hand. Being in constant pain isn't living either. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Maya's voice remained calm but firm. You trusted me enough to marry me, to share your life with me. Trust me enough to be honest about what you're going through. Eleanor stared at their joined hands for a long moment. When she looked up, her composure had cracked slightly. I'm terrified of losing control, of becoming a burden, of you seeing me as pathetic. Dr. Reeves cleared her throat diplomatically. I'll give you two some privacy to discuss this. But Eleanor, we can't wait much longer to make these decisions. Alone in the examination room, Eleanor seemed smaller somehow, as if the weight of her mortality had finally caught up with her carefully maintained facade. You could never be pathetic, Maya said quietly. You're the strongest person I've ever met, but strength doesn't mean suffering in silence. I don't know how to be weak, Maya. I've spent 71 years being strong for everyone else. Then let me be strong for you sometimes. That's what marriage is, isn't it? Supporting each other? Eleanor's laugh was shaky but genuine. Is it? I wouldn't know. This is my first. Mine too, Maya admitted. Maybe we can figure it out together. That evening, they established a new routine. Instead of retreating to separate spaces after dinner, they remained in the living room. Eleanor would settle on the sofa with her correspondence while Maya studied at the nearby desk. The silence between them was comfortable now, punctuated by the occasional question or observation. Maya, Eleanor said suddenly, looking up from a letter she'd been writing. What will you do after? Maya didn't pretend to misunderstand. Continue my studies. Use the foundation to fund water projects in underserved communities. Try to make the kind of difference you would have wanted to see. And personally, you're 22. You'll want to marry someone you actually love, have children, build a real life. Maya considered this. Over the past few days, she'd found herself thinking less about her previous life and more about the strange sense of belonging she felt in this penthouse, with this remarkable woman. I think, she said carefully, that love comes in many forms. What we have, it may not be romantic, but it's real. It matters. Eleanor's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. You constantly surprise me, Maya Chen. Good. Someone should keep you on your toes. They shared a smile that felt like a small miracle, a moment of pure understanding between two souls who'd found each other. In the most unlikely circumstances, neither of them could have predicted that in just 3 days, Everything would change in a way that would test the foundation they'd begun to build. The 7th day of their marriage dawned gray and drizzling, matching Maya's mood as she prepared for her environmental engineering midterm. She'd been studying for weeks, but the weight of her new circumstances made it difficult to concentrate. Eleanor had been up most of the night with pain, and Maya could hear her moving restlessly in the adjacent room. "You don't have to stay," Eleanor had insisted that morning over breakfast, noting Maya's concerned glances. "I'm not going anywhere, and your education is the whole point of this arrangement." But as Maya sat in the lecture hall, trying to focus on watershed management principles, her mind kept drifting back to the penthouse. Something about Eleanor's demeanor that morning had felt different, not just the physical discomfort, but a tension that seemed to emanate from somewhere deeper. The exam finished earlier than expected, and Maya found herself hurrying home with an urgency she couldn't explain. The doorman greeted her with his usual polite smile, and the elevator rose smoothly to the penthouse level, everything appearing perfectly normal. But when the doors opened, Maya immediately sensed something was wrong. The apartment was too quiet. Eleanor's usual afternoon routine involved classical music playing softly in the background while she worked in her study, but today there was only silence. "Eleanor?" Maya called out, setting her bag down in the foyer. No response. Maya moved through the apartment methodically, checking the kitchen, the living room, Eleanor's bedroom, empty. Finally, she approached the study, Eleanor's inner sanctum where she conducted business and managed her various philanthropic endeavors. The door was slightly ajar, and Maya could hear the faint sound of voices, Eleanor's and another she didn't recognize. She was about to announce her presence when something in Eleanor's tone made her pause. "Absolutely certain the marriage is legal?" the unfamiliar voice was asking. It belonged to a man, older, with the crisp diction of expensive education. "Completely airtight, Richard. Margaret Harrison performed the ceremony herself, and the documentation is flawless." Eleanor's voice carried a note of satisfaction that made Maya's blood run cold. "And the girl has no idea?" "None whatsoever. Maya is intelligent but naive. She actually believes this is some sort of philanthropic gesture." Eleanor's laugh was unlike anything Maya had heard from her before. Cold, calculating. "The poor little thing is so grateful, it's almost touching." Maya pressed herself against the wall, her heart hammering so loudly she was certain they'd hear it. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be the woman she'd come to care for, to trust. "Brilliant strategy," Richard continued. "Creating a legal heir who's bound to you by marriage eliminates any possibility of the board contesting your final wishes. They can challenge a will, but they can't challenge inheritance rights." "Exactly. And when the cancer takes me, which, according to Dr. Reeves, should be within the next 2 months, Maya will inherit everything." But here's the beautiful part, Richard. She's so idealistic, so committed to doing good with the money, that she'll essentially be carrying out my vision anyway. I get to control my legacy from beyond the grave. What about the girl's feelings? She seems to have developed genuine affection for you. There was a pause, and when Eleanor spoke again, her voice was almost contemplative. That was unexpected, I'll admit. I chose her precisely because she was desperate enough to agree to this arrangement, but principled enough to handle the inheritance responsibly. I didn't anticipate emotional complications. Are you having second thoughts? Second thoughts? Eleanor's laugh was sharp. Richard, I'm dying. I don't have the luxury of second thoughts. Everything I've built, everything I've worked for, it needs to survive me. Maya Chen is simply the most elegant solution to that problem. Maya felt the world tilt around her. The kindness, the shared meals, the gentle conversations about dreams and fears. All of it had been a performance. She was nothing more than a carefully selected pawn in Eleanor's chess game with mortality. The foundation board doesn't suspect anything. They think I've finally lost my mind to grief and medication. A dying old woman marrying a girl young enough to be her granddaughter? They're prepared to write it off as the delusions of terminal illness. By the time they realize how strategically sound it was, it'll be too late. Maya forced herself to keep listening, though every word felt like a physical blow. What if she discovers the truth? What could she do? The marriage is legal. The inheritance laws are clear. Even if Maya learned everything tomorrow, the outcome would be the same. She's bound to me now, legally and financially. And given her background, her family's circumstances, she's hardly in a position to walk away from. $57 million out of wounded pride. The casual cruelty of that assessment. The assumption that Maya could be bought and would stay bought regardless of how she'd been manipulated was perhaps the most devastating revelation of all. You've thought of everything, Eleanor. I have to admit, it's masterful. I didn't build a business empire by leaving things to chance, Richard. Every contingency has been considered, every variable accounted for. Maya Chen will inherit my wealth, continue my work, and never realize she was selected for this role, rather than stumbling into it by chance. Maya heard the sound of papers shuffling, chairs moving. They were preparing to conclude their meeting. Moving as quietly as possible, she retreated from the study, her mind reeling with the implications of what she'd overheard. She made it to her room just as she heard the study door open fully and footsteps in the hallway. Collapsing onto her bed, Maya stared at the ceiling as tears began to flow, not just from hurt, but from a crushing sense of betrayal that went beyond anything she'd ever experienced. Eleanor had played her perfectly. The vulnerable moments, the shared stories about Tommy, the apparent trust and affection, all of it carefully calculated to ensure Maya's compliance and emotional investment. She'd been so grateful, so moved by Eleanor's seeming generosity, that she'd never questioned the incredible coincidence of being chosen by a complete stranger. But now the pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Eleanor's research into Maya's character and circumstances hadn't been casual observation. It had been a thorough vetting process. The marriage proposal hadn't been a dying woman's impulsive gesture. It had been a strategic, business decision designed to protect Eleanor's legacy while ensuring continued control even after death. Maya heard Eleanor's voice in the hallway, presumably saying goodbye to Richard, and quickly wiped her eyes. She couldn't let Eleanor know what she'd discovered. Not yet. Not until she decided what to do with this devastating knowledge. When Eleanor knocked softly on her door a few minutes later, Maya managed to sound relatively normal as she called out, "Come in." Eleanor entered with her usual gentle smile, the same expression that had comforted Maya through difficult moments over the past week. Now it looked like a mask, and Maya wondered how she'd ever believed it was genuine. "How was your exam, dear?" "Fine," Maya managed. "I think it went well. I'm proud of you. I know this situation hasn't made studying easy." Eleanor's tone carried the same warmth it always had, and Maya marveled at the older woman's acting ability. They stood there for a moment, two women locked in a relationship built on lies and manipulation, both of them performing their assigned roles. Eleanor, the caring benefactor. Maya, the grateful recipient. "I'll let you rest," Eleanor said finally. "We can have dinner together later if you'd like." "I'd like that," Maya replied, because it was what Eleanor expected to hear. As the door closed behind Eleanor, Maya finally allowed herself to acknowledge the full scope of her situation. She was married to a woman who saw her as nothing more than a useful tool. She was living in a home where every gesture of kindness was calculated. She was trapped in a web of legal obligations and financial incentives that had been specifically designed to ensure her compliance. But perhaps most devastating of all, she realized that despite everything she'd just learned, a part of her still cared for the woman she thought she'd been getting to know. The Eleanor who had shared stories about Tommy, who had cooked simple meals, who had allowed Maya to see her vulnerability. That woman might have been a performance, but Maya's feelings for her had been real. Now she had to decide what to do with the truth. And she had less than 2 months to figure it out before Eleanor's death would seal her fate forever. That night, Maya lay awake staring at the ceiling, Eleanor's words echoing in her mind like a cruel refrain. Maya Chen is simply the most elegant solution to that problem. The woman sleeping in the next room, who had seemed so genuine in her vulnerability and kindness, had orchestrated one of the most sophisticated manipulations Maya could have imagined. But as the hours passed, something else began to emerge from Maya's hurt and anger, a strange sense of clarity. Eleanor had chosen her, yes, but not randomly. She'd been selected specifically because of her character, her dreams, her capacity to use wealth responsibly. In a twisted way, it was still a kind of faith. The next morning, Maya emerged from her room to find Eleanor in the kitchen, moving slowly but determinedly as she prepared breakfast. The older woman's face was pale, and Maya could see the effort each movement required. "You didn't have to do this," Maya said, accepting the cup of coffee Eleanor offered. "I wanted to." Eleanor's smile seemed genuine, though Maya now questioned everything she thought she knew about this woman's expressions. "Besides, I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, about being strong for each other." Maya nearly choked on her coffee. The irony was staggering. Eleanor talking about mutual support while concealing the fact that their entire relationship was based on deception. Over the following days, Maya found herself in an impossible position. She watched Eleanor carefully, looking for cracks in the facade, moments when the real woman might emerge from behind the performance. But if Eleanor was acting, she was remarkably consistent. When Eleanor had a particularly bad night, Maya held cold compresses to her forehead and didn't mention the overheard conversation. When Eleanor shared memories of building her business empire, describing the loneliness and sacrifices involved, Maya listened without revealing that she knew it was all part of a calculated emotional manipulation. But Maya was conducting her own investigation. Now, she began spending time in Eleanor's study when the older woman was at medical appointments, carefully examining documents and correspondence. What she found was complex and contradictory. Yes, there were legal documents clearly outlining the inheritance strategy Richard had discussed, but there were also personal letters, journal entries, and private notes that suggested Eleanor's feelings were more complicated than Maya had overheard. In Eleanor's private journal, Maya found entries that seemed to contradict the cold calculation she'd witnessed. Day 3. Maya made soup when she saw I was struggling with the medication. No one asked her to. No one would have known if she hadn't. There's something about genuine kindness that can't be manufactured. Day 5. She asks about Tommy not because she wants something, but because she sees my pain and wants to understand it. When did someone last care about my pain for its own sake? Day 8. I find myself looking forward to our conversations. This was supposed to be a business arrangement, but Maya makes me remember what connection feels like. Maya stared at these entries, her understanding of the situation becoming more muddled rather than clearer. Was Eleanor genuinely conflicted about her own manipulation? Or were these entries simply another layer of the deception, designed to be found? 2 weeks after the overheard conversation, Eleanor collapsed again, this time more seriously. Maya found her unconscious on the bathroom floor and, ignoring Eleanor's previous instructions, called 911. At the hospital, Dr. Reeves was blunt about the prognosis. "We're looking at weeks now, not months. The cancer is progressing faster than we anticipated." Eleanor, conscious again but clearly weakened, gripped Maya's hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry you have to see me like this." Maya studied Eleanor's face, searching for signs of performance, but all she saw was genuine fear and regret. "Don't apologize for being human," Maya replied softly. That night, as Eleanor slept fitfully in the hospital bed, Maya made a decision that surprised even her. She was going to confront Eleanor with the truth, not out of anger or a desire for revenge, but because she needed to know which version of Eleanor Whitman was real. The next morning, after the nurses had completed their rounds and they were alone, Maya took a deep breath. "I know about Richard's visit," she said quietly. Eleanor went very still. For a long moment, the only sound was the steady beeping of medical monitors. "How much did you hear?" Eleanor's voice was barely audible. "All of it. The strategic selection, the inheritance manipulation. The fact that you see me as an elegant solution to controlling your legacy." Maya's voice remained calm, though her heart was racing. Eleanor closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, tears were flowing freely. "Maya, I need to understand something," Maya continued. "The woman who held me when I cried about my family's struggles, who shared stories about Tommy, who cooked dinner and asked about my dreams. Was any of that real?" Eleanor was quiet for so long that Maya began to think she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "I told myself it wasn't. For weeks, I convinced myself that every gesture, Every conversation was part of the strategy. Eleanor turned to look directly at Maya. But the truth is, somewhere in the middle of manipulating you, I forgot I was supposed to be acting. What does that mean? It means that yes, I chose you for calculated reasons. Yes, I manipulated the situation to serve my purposes. But it also means that in the process I did something I swore I'd never do again after Tommy died. Eleanor's voice broke. I let myself care about someone. Maya felt tears beginning to flow, though she wasn't sure if they were from relief, sadness, or something more complex. The journal entries about our conversations, about looking forward to seeing you each day, those weren't written for anyone to find. Maya, those were written by a dying woman who was surprised to discover that her final act of manipulation had become the most genuine relationship of her adult life. They sat in silence, both of them crying, both of them grappling with the complexity of what lay between them. Love built on deception, but somehow still love. What happens now? Maya asked finally. Eleanor reached for her hand. That's entirely up to you. You know the truth now. You could walk away, annul the marriage, return to your previous life. I'd understand completely. Maya considered this. She could leave, return to her struggling existence, her uncertain future. Eleanor had given her that choice by revealing the truth, but she'd also given her something else, the knowledge that even the most calculated manipulation could evolve into something real. That love could grow in the most unlikely soil, or, Maya prompted, or you stay, not because you're trapped by legal arrangements or financial incentives, but because you choose to. Because what we've built together, however it started, has become worth preserving. Maya looked at this remarkable, flawed, dying woman who had changed her life in ways she was still understanding. Eleanor had manipulated her, yes, but she'd also trusted her with a fortune, believed in her dreams, and shown her a kind of life Maya had never imagined possible. Most importantly, Eleanor had done something Maya hadn't expected. She'd chosen truth over self-preservation, even when that truth might cost her everything. I'm staying, Maya said quietly, squeezing Eleanor's hand. Not because of the money or the inheritance, but because you trusted me enough to tell me the truth when you didn't have to. Eleanor's sob was audible. You're sure? Maya, you could have any life you want now. You don't have to tie yourself to a dying woman's complicated legacy. But what if I want to? Maya's voice grew stronger. What if somewhere in the middle of being manipulated, I also forgot this was supposed to be just a business arrangement? Eleanor stared at her in wonder. You're extraordinary, Maya Chen. Even more than I realized when I chose you. We chose each other, Maya corrected gently. Maybe not in the traditional way, but we did. The remaining weeks passed in a strange kind of grace. Eleanor's health declined rapidly, but their relationship deepened in ways neither had anticipated. They spoke honestly now about everything. Eleanor's fears about death and legacy, Maya's concerns about inheriting such enormous responsibility, the unlikely love that had grown between them despite its manipulative origins. Eleanor insisted on teaching Maya about the business empire she would inherit, but more importantly, she shared the philosophy behind her philanthropic work. Money is just a tool, she explained during one of their long afternoon conversations. The question is what you're building with it. I want to build bridges, Maya replied, between communities that need resources and people who have them, between different worlds that don't understand each other. Like us, Eleanor smiled. Like us. On a crisp November morning, 3 months after their wedding, Eleanor Whitman died peacefully in her sleep. Maya was holding her hand. 6 months later, Maya stood before the board of the Whitman Foundation, presenting her proposal for a global water initiative that would fund sustainable infrastructure projects in underserved communities. The board members, some skeptical, some curious, all surprised by the young woman's competence, listened as she outlined a vision that was both practical and ambitious. Mrs. Chen, one board member said when she finished, "This is quite different from Mrs. Whitman's usual approach to philanthropy." With respect, Maya replied, Eleanor always said that the foundation should evolve. She chose me not to be her carbon copy, but to bring my own vision to her resources. After the meeting, Maya returned to the penthouse, still hers, though she'd moved Eleanor's personal items to a special room where she could visit the memories when she needed to. She'd kept Eleanor's study exactly as it was, and she often worked there, feeling the presence of the remarkable woman who had changed her life. That evening, Maya called her mother in California to share the news about the Foundation's approval of her water project. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart," her mother said. "Eleanor would be proud too." Maya had told her family the truth about Eleanor's illness and death, though not about the initial manipulation. Some truths were too complex to burden others with, and what mattered was not how their relationship had begun, but what it had become. "Mom," Maya said suddenly, "can I ask you something? Do you think it's possible to love someone even when they've lied to you?" Her mother was quiet for a moment. "Baby, everyone lies sometimes. The question is whether they love you enough to tell you the truth when it matters most." Maya smiled, thinking of Eleanor's final weeks, when honesty had replaced manipulation and genuine connection had triumphed over strategic calculation. "Yeah," she said softly. "I think she did." After the call, Maya sat in Eleanor's favorite chair by the window, watching the city lights twinkle below. In her lap was a letter she'd found among Eleanor's papers after the funeral. A letter addressed to her, written in Eleanor's careful handwriting. "My dear Maya, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've inherited not just my wealth but my complicated legacy. I hope by now you understand that while our marriage began as my manipulation, it ended as the most honest relationship of my life. I chose you because I thought you were strong enough to handle my fortune responsibly. I was right about that, but I underestimated something crucial. You were also kind enough to love a dying woman despite her flaws. Use the money to build the world you dream of. But more importantly, remember that love can grow anywhere, even in the soil of deception, if it's tended with enough truth. You gave me the greatest gift of my final months. You showed me that it's never too late to choose genuine connection over strategic advantage. Thank you for teaching an old woman how to love without calculation. Forever grateful, Eleanor. P.S. The pearl necklace you wore to our wedding was my mother's. I'd like you to have it, not as part of the inheritance, but as a gift from someone who learned what family really means because of you." Maya wiped away tears as she finished reading. Outside, the city continued its endless dance of ambition and dreams, of people seeking connection and purpose in whatever way they could find it. She thought of Eleanor, who had spent 60 years building walls around her heart, and then spent her final months learning to tear them down. She thought of the water projects that would soon bring clean drinking water to thousands of people. She thought of the unlikely love story that had grown from manipulation into something pure and lasting. Tomorrow, Maya would begin the work of honoring Eleanor's legacy while building her own. She would use the Whitman fortune to create bridges between worlds, just as she and Eleanor had built an impossible bridge between their two very different lives. But tonight, she simply sat with the memory of the remarkable woman who had taught her that sometimes the most profound love stories begin with deception and end with truth, and that family can be created in the most unexpected ways. The city sparkled below, full of its own stories of unlikely connections and second chances. And in the penthouse that had become her home, Maya Chen, widow, heiress, and bridge builder, smiled through her tears and began planning the future that Eleanor had made possible. And so ends this incredible story of Maya and Eleanor, a tale that reminds us that love, connection, and family can emerge from the most unexpected circumstances. Sometimes what begins as strategy becomes sincerity, and what starts as manipulation transforms into the most genuine relationship of our lives. Maya's journey from struggling student to guardian of a vast, philanthropic empire shows us that our greatest opportunities often come disguised as impossible choices. Eleanor's evolution from calculating businesswoman to vulnerable human being proves that it's never too late to choose authenticity over advantage. Their story challenges us to look beyond surface appearances and easy judgments, to understand that human motivations are complex, and that love can grow in the most unlikely soil when tended with honesty and courage. Thank you so much for joining me on this emotional journey. Stories like this remind us of the power of human connection and the importance of second chances. If this tale moved you, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories that will touch your heart and challenge your assumptions about love, family, and what it means to truly know another person. Drop a comment below and let me know what you thought about Maya and Eleanor's remarkable relationship. Have you ever experienced a connection that defied your expectations? I read every comment and love hearing your thoughts. Until next time, remember that the most extraordinary love stories are often the ones that begin in the most ordinary or unexpected ways.